I have to say, I watched that hearing. It was on Zoom, available for all of us to see, with utter fascination. That at what these the details of what these lawyers had actually done, actually said in court, and the documents they actually brought into court that turned out to be fraudulent.
Truly. Yeah. I used to be the dean of a law school here in Detroit, and we train our students to be lawyers who will uphold the law, who will respect our Constitution, and who won't use the law to sow seeds of doubt falsely through frivolous complaints about the integrity of our elections. And that's precisely what happened here. And there need to be consequences for that, not just for our democracy and the foundation of our entire rule of law, but to send a message to future attorneys, others who may be trying to explore these shenanigans in future elections, that there is no place for that here in Michigan or anywhere else. And that's what this Rule 11 sanctions hearing is primarily designed to do, to hold those who misused their power as attorneys, to hold them accountable.
Now, the federal court cannot disbar them because they don't actually have jurisdiction over their law licenses, but the judge could recommend it to the authorities that control that. One of the defenses that we heard yesterday, which stunned me, was that lawyers have a First Amendment right to lie in court. They were actually claiming a First Amendment right to do this. The judge asked for a single case. Could they give her a single case saying that lawyers have a First Amendment right to lie in court? And of course, they couldn't do that.
No, lawyers have a responsibility to uphold the law, to seek justice on behalf of their clients, not to lie and file frivolous, meritless complaints, all of which were dismissed, that are really designed as a PR strategy to undermine the public's faith in our elections. That is not what the courts are for. And there's no room for lies and misinformation in a court of law, particularly a federal court of law that's designed to enforce and uphold the principles of our federal Constitution. So this sanctions hearing is really what has been established in federal court to protect the sanctity of the courts as a place where justice can be sought and served, not as a place where people can sow seeds of doubt and spread lies and deceive people about the truth and the integrity of our democracy.
Rudy Giuliani is already temporarily disbarred, pending full permanent disbarment, which surely is coming in both New York and Washington. Is that enough to scare off lawyers from doing this in the future?
Perhaps, but remember, there's a lot of things happening here. We're also seeing attorneys benefit financially through fundraising efforts and others in Arizona and Michigan by spreading this misinformation. It's become challenging election results you don't agree with. Became in the 2020 election cycle a strategy for undermining the public's faith in our democracy, but also a cottage industry of those trying to gain fame, influence, maybe political power, and raise money and build wealth off of lying to people. So there's a lot of accountability that needs to happen. This is one of those pieces, particularly for those attorneys. But political accountability is important as well, and voters have the ability to hold leaders accountable who lied to them about their democracy at the ballot box. So we need to seek accountability in every way we can, because this cannot become the norm in our democracy. We have to respect the will of the voters, not try to overturn it if we disagree with the results.
Let's listen to what President Biden said today about what the Trump lawyers were up to.
More than 80 judges, including those appointed by my predecessor, heard the arguments. In every case, neither cause nor evidence was found to undermine the national achievement of administering the historic election in the face of such extraordinary challenges.
It just makes you wonder, Secretary Benson, how many times do they have to lose to believe they've lost in court?
Well, as long as it becomes profitable to spread the big lie, as long as they can get attention and perhaps win elections even by spreading false information, and that remains to be seen as we approach the midterms next year. But there's a lot of ways I think people will still try to profit and gain power off of lying. But it's going to take leaders on both sides of the aisle, as many have, to consistently stand up and prioritize saving democracy as the number one issue of our time. I'm grateful that the president and the vice president, who was in Detroit on Monday, have prioritized this issue, but we need even more actions than ever before, really in also recognition of folks like those Democrats in Texas who have put their jobs, their careers, and so much on the line just to raise awareness about the need to do more to protect democracy against those who will try to change the rules of the game or lie to voters in a way with the goal of trying to undermine the will of the people and overturn it in future elections.